Welcome to Disrupting Japan, straight talk from Japan's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for joining me. Today's conversation with Ryotaro Ako, founder of Atopiyo, is going to be a little bit different than usual. I first met Ryotaro several years ago at a Disrupting Japan live event when he had just launched Atopiyo, an online community in which people with atopy and related skin conditions can support each other and exchange information about treatments and progress. Now, since its launch, Atopiyo has gone on to build an engaged and growing user base, attract extensive and positive press attention, and win a lot of startup awards from press, government, and industry. This is the kind of startup I really want to succeed. The kind of startup I think everyone really wants to succeed, actually. They're using startup techniques and technology to solve problems and actually make the world a little bit better. At least in theory. You see, Ryotaro and Atopiyo have a bit of a problem. And it's a problem that almost all social entrepreneurs run into, but very few manage to solve. And if in this interview I sound like I'm beating up on my guest a bit, by polite Japanese standards anyway, it's coming from a place of desperately wanting to see him succeed. Everyone who has an idea for a social startup and a passion to change the world can learn a lot from Atopiyo's story and this discussion. But you know, Ryotaro tells that story much better than I can. So let's get right to the interview. So I'm sitting here with Ryotaro Ako of Atopiyo, which helps people with atopy understand the disease and connect with each other. So thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you very much, Tim, and I'm very glad to talk with you.
And we're glad to have you. I gave a really brief description of Atopiyo, but I think you can explain it much better than I can. So what exactly does Atopiyo do? How does it work?
Atopiyo is Japan's first visual SNS for atopic dermatitis. It's like Instagram, specializing in atopic dermatitis.
Okay, I mean, at first reaction, sharing pictures of atopy and skin conditions does not sound that appealing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, tell me about your users. Who uses this? Why do they find it valuable?
Yes. A lot of images of skin disease. So I think it is not so photogenic or happy images. But patients want to know the other patients, their skin disease, how getting better or how getting worse because of these drugs or other drugs. And they want to know the process of the skin disease. So it's very useful for their patients. And what's more, they want to choose their images into their private mode. So if you switch it to the private mode, these images only for users.
Okay, so the main benefit the users get is they can compare their treatment and their progress with other people that are having similar treatments and things like that. I can certainly see why that'd be valuable. And I guess we got to point out, like, emphatically, this is not for medical diagnostics or treatment, right? It's just a social community.
Yes, it's not a medical treatment or such a diagnosis. Yes.
And we'll dive into that a bit later when we talk about the business model.
Okay, yeah.
But before that, let's talk a bit about you.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, before you started this, I mean, you had atopy yourself, and you'd volunteered at a number of like patient support groups, right?
Yes, I am a recovered patient of atopic dermatitis, and I recovered, but other patients are suffering every day. So I interviewed and I researched their troubles, And I decided to develop this app.
But when you decided to do this, you didn't have a technical co-founder.
Yeah. At first, I tried to find the programmers for 1 or 2 months. Yes, but I gave up because
It's really hard.
yeah, I gave up 4 or 5 years ago.
I understand. I get contacted by probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 people every month who have this great ideas and say, "Well, I'm looking for a technical co-founder." It's like, man, that's hard.
Yeah, very hard for me, and so yes, so I participated in a lot of events such as Disrupting Japan's third anniversary or such a
Thank
very
you.
yeah, a lot of events I participated, but it's difficult.
So you finally took matters into your own hands.
Yes, I entered the programming school, online programming school in Japan. It's called Tech Academy. I studied there for 5 months.
And that was enough to launch back in 2018, right?
Yes, 2018 is the first launch.
I think this is a story a lot of founders are trying to figure out. They're one person with an idea of how to make something that's worthwhile. But you managed to learn enough to launch the app in 5 months.
Actually, programming school is 5 months, and after that, I developed myself 2 months, maybe 7 months and more.
But that's great. I mean, I think a lot of people are interested in just how do you go from one person with an idea on how to help people build the app, and how do you turn that into a business?
Yes.
Which is what we want to talk about next. And actually, you've just established a Godo Gaisha recently, right?
Yeah, last week I founded Atopiyo LLC.
And I'm curious, why a GK instead of a KK?
Because GK is very easy to found and very easy to manage. So I choose it.
And I mean, a GK is very easy to convert into a KK later on if you decide to. Okay, so let's talk about the business model. So what's the plan? How's Atopiyo going to make money?
Atopiyo is one of the largest database for atopic dermatitis patients. So now many pharmaceutical companies develop new medicine. Atopiyo provides information about their patients to the pharmaceutical company without their personal information.
At the moment, it's just photographs. Are you planning on collecting more deeper and detailed information about the users?
Yes. Now we had profiles like sex or age or atopic period. In the future, we would like to have more deeper information.
Looking back over the past couple of years, you guys have run actually a lot of awards from both universities, government programs,
Yes.
incubators, pitch contests. It's been the string of awards for an interesting idea. And I'm curious, did those awards help you land like the business connections? Did those awards help you get the business, or was that almost a separate?
These awards helped me to spread this Atopiyo app because Atopiyo app is just a volunteer for me, so we don't have any budget. So I would like to spread it to the atopic patients in Japan. So this will help me to efficient spreading in Japan, and so over 100 million.
So the pitch contest was mostly about more of a marketing strategy
Yes.
than a business model development. But I mean, you mentioned you have been working with pharma companies and medical institutions for some time now. So getting them data on atopy patients, it's one of those things that sounds worthwhile as a first step, but let's dig into that a little more. So,
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical companies, they already have lots and lots of pictures of atopy and different types of skin diseases. And so what are they getting here that's really unique? What is the value they find in this community?
A pharmaceutical company have a data from doctors or hospital, but they don't have the data from patients. Direct to patients data. That's kind of the data called real world data. They are thinking of the real world data and they want to know their suffering and they want to use it for the new medicine. Yes, that is a new trend for the company.
So for example, the pharmaceutical companies could follow the progress of individuals that are going through a certain kind of treatment or that are taking a certain medication?
A pharmaceutical company, they want to find the female situation or male situation and children's situation or some situation.
One of the challenges in med tech across the board, it kicks in from like small one-person startups to very well funded. Medical technology and medical information is really highly regulated, which is good for the most part.
Mm.
Do you run into any problems with Japan's law on personal privacy and on storing medical information with this app?
Yes, right now we don't include such a medical information or medical treatment. But in the future, we want to collaborate with hospital or pharmaceutical company. So now we think about such a legal data treatment. Yes, we are thinking now.
It seems to me that like every medical startup runs into one of two hurdles, or often both. One is either in the handling of patient data, which is, there's a lot of laws and protections around. And the other is getting certified as a medical device. If you're doing things that are related to diagnostics or to treatment, there's a whole lot of complex rules you need to follow.
Yes.
These are big steps. So how are you getting ready to tackle those?
I don't have any medical background, so I'd like to collaborate with doctors and pharmacists and other AI engineer. Or yes, we need help.
It sounds to me like you're sort of in the same situation you were 4 years ago, but like at a little bit of a higher level, right?
Yeah.
You're still in the situation where you need outside experts for programming and medical advice.
Yes, it's very hard.
Have you been involved with Japan's regulatory sandbox at all?
Not yet.
That seems like a very good program that allows, certain regulations to be relaxed or for experimental reasons.
Yes, maybe.
Well, let me ask you, building this company out, looking forward, knowing that, you might need to bring people on to meet the requirements for data privacy protection or to develop something that's certifiable as a medical device of some level. So these are skills that, like, unlike before, like when you were going back and learning programming on your own, this is probably something you can't learn to do by yourself.
Yeah, but I think it's very hard to.
It's a different level, right?
Yeah, I think it's different level, so I need to have experts.
So how do you move to that level? Is there enough revenue in providing non-patient, this anonymized information to pharmaceutical companies and to medical institutions? Is that enough revenue to get you to the next stage?
No, it's only anonymous data. It's not included personal information, but if we connect with personal information, it's very valuable more than now. So we need some lawyers and we need pharmacists. And yes.
So that's the big question. So where is that funding coming from? Is it coming from outside investors? Is it coming from revenues from contracts with the pharma companies?
I just think a revenue from pharmaceutical company, and I find other members from other healthcare or medical community. It's my job, find the other members.
So these experts you need, are they going to be like full-time staff? Are they going to be volunteers?
First, part-time staff, because the expert is very expensive, so part-time staff is better.
What is the timing of that? When are you starting on this next step?
Yes, okay. Maybe next year or 2 years. So this year, I want to focus on the Atopiyo app because I want to update a lot of functions.
So I've been working with so many social entrepreneurs in Japan, and there's so many amazing ideas that can really make the world better and hopefully generate revenues. But
yes,
I think what you're talking about is like one of the biggest challenges. Volunteers are great. They're awesome people, but they're not enough, right? We can't count on them. They've got their own lives and their own problems and their own commitments.
Yes.
So the challenge of all these social startups, and the same one you seem to be staring at right now, is how to make that transition, how to generate the revenue so that you can start paying people.
I think most important thing is users, and second one is collaborate with a pharmaceutical company. And now Atopiyo is one of the biggest app for patients. So this community is one of the biggest. So yes.
Well, I get it. It's a really unique and special community. There's nothing quite like it. It clearly provides a lot of value and support to the people who are part of it. The question is how to transition that into a business in such a way that it still provides all of that, but somehow generates revenue. Because cash flow is it's like blood, right? You don't need a lot of it, but it has to circulate. I mean, you are an accountant, you know this stuff. I mean,
yeah, I know. Yes. So I'm thinking about collaborate with pharmaceutical company. Actually, there are 2 or 3 steps. First one is the introduction of investigators, like a clinical trial. And the second one is providing patient's data without personal information. Yeah, so now we are thinking about the 2 options.
What's the target for that? Is that going to happen later this year?
This year.
Yeah, that is good. One thing I've noticed that is different between startup culture in Japan and the US, Japanese large enterprises and institutions seem to be willing to make more long-term partnerships with startups, where in the US things tend to be more transactional.
Yeah.
Do you plan on monetizing in the other direction? Because usually one of the main strategies of monetizing a community of any kind is advertising.
Yeah, I know.
Is that something you're exploring?
No, because there are a lot of cream or there are a lot of medicine, and maybe some cream is effective. Maybe the other one is not effective. So there are a lot of medicine. So a lot of patients are suffering because this advertisement.
Actually, I think that's really smart. I mean, you have to choose one strategy or the other. Either go with the hospitals and the doctors, or you go with the advertisers.
Yeah. So I choose only pharmaceutical company and doctors.
Yeah, I think that's smart long term because advertisers, you'd suddenly attract a lot of, I don't know, supplements and kind of semi-scammy. Yeah.
Yes. I don't like it.
So advertising is like the easiest way to monetize a community, but it often, and I've seen it happen a lot, it'll often destroy the community that they're advertising to. So I'm glad to hear you're doing it the hard way.
Yes. I choose hard way.
I think that'll do the most good in the long run. even if it's hard.
Oh, yeah. Long term, yes.
So, well, let's talk about the future here. So I noticed you were selected for Jetro's Silicon Valley program.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that. What do you guys expect to get out of that program?
In the US, 27 million people are suffering this disease. So I want to spread this Atopiyo up to the US patients. That is my, yes, objective.
Actually, let me push back on that. I think there's two risks here. Right now, you definitely have the best community of atopy sufferers. They're supportive. It's the largest. But if someone decided to do the other business model, say we're going to be completely advertising supported, I mean, it's as a business that might be difficult to compete with, even if you're doing the right thing long term.
I think advertising business price is cheap, I think. And the pharmaceutical company have a lot of money. So they have a lot of budget. Yeah.
They have a lot of money, but that does not mean they're going to give it to you.
Yeah, maybe.
So what does Atopiyo look like in 10 years? What is this going to evolve into?
I want this to peer up, spread out all over the world. That is my final objective. Yes. I have to focus on this SNS, social networking. So we collaborate with the hospital or pharmaceutical company. We just focus on the SNS.
And do you think that model will work? So, for example, in Japan, I think Japanese startups, one thing that they're very lucky about is they do have institutions and enterprises that are willing to work and develop long-term relationships that doesn't really exist in the US or in most of Europe. So this model might work in Japan. Do you think it will work in the US and outside of Japan as well? This long-term hard way of doing things.
Actually, I don't know because I just I actually I don't know.
Well, listen, Ryotaro, before we wrap up, I want to ask you what I call my magic wand question. And that is, if I gave you a magic wand and I told you that you could change one thing about Japan, anything at all, the education system, how people think about risk, how the medical industry is regulated, anything at all to make it better for startups and innovation in Japan, what would you change?
People's mind.
About what?
Japanese people is conservative. They want to stay. They want to progress step by step. Very conservative. They don't challenge another thing or new things.
One of the biggest differences. So when I very first came to Japan, it was in the late '80s. It was still bubbly.
Yeah, Barbie. Yeah, it's a nice time.
Yeah, it was a fun time to be in Japan.
Yeah,
it really
nice
was.
Era. Yeah, very good.
But at that time, people were also very conservative in that, this is the way we do things. It's the right way. We don't want to change. But people aren't conservative in that way anymore. I think people understand that, like, we need to change. These are things we need to improve on. So why do you think it's difficult if everyone sort of agrees that we need to improve and we need to change? Why is it? What makes it hard to change?
Yeah, Japanese people imitate other people. Japanese people don't go out by oneself or invent new things by oneself. They imitate the other one. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that. But I think one of the interesting things we've seen in how startups have developed in Japan, it is related to that imitation, in that 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, I think Japan was very much looking at Silicon Valley and the rest of the world saying, what are they doing? Let's do that. Like you were saying, imitate that. But I think now it seems to be a bit different. I think there's a lot of Japanese companies coming up with their own unique ideas and a lot more desire to like change things in Japan.
Yeah. I also think so. It's a transition time for us. Yes, including me. We are changing now.
But just too slowly.
Yeah, just too sorry.
Okay. Well, at least we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, right direction, maybe.
Well, listen, Ryotaro, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
I'm very happy to talk with you.
And we're back. Regardless of the eventual outcome, I really respect Ryotaro's choice not to monetize via advertising. But it's a risky choice, at least until he gets a solid revenue model in place. It's often said that all online platforms eventually become ad platforms. And most of them certainly do. This is true not only for community spaces, but for businesses like Amazon, who's expected to sell over $25 billion in ads this year, and where ad sales is one of their fastest growing lines of business. While running ads is by far the easiest way to monetize a community, what founders need to realize, both social startups and regular startups, is that advertising risks fundamentally changing the nature of a community. You see, the fundamental transaction when selling ads is that you are exchanging the trust that your users have in you for your advertisers' money. You're selling trust. And that's not always bad, but you need to make those choices carefully. I mean, when I was doing Disrupting Japan full-time, I had a group of amazing sponsors who genuinely supported the show. I only had one who ever even suggested influencing the content. And he backed down after some polite pushback. But the pressure was still there. These people were my customers. I'd made promises. They had believed in me, and I wanted to do right by them. It's always a hard balance to strike, and most founders will not be lucky enough to have such understanding sponsors. So I think it's awesome that Ryotaro recognizes that and wants to do things the hard way. I'm rooting for Ryotaro and for Atopiyo. I think a lot of people are. And with Japanese enterprises less transactional and more willing to enter into long-term relationships with startups, Atopiyo might just nail down a reliable business model. But the clock is ticking. Hopefully we'll be hearing big things about Atopiyo very soon. If you want to talk more about community building or monetization, Ryotaro and I would love to hear from you. So come by disruptingjapan.com/show178 and let's talk about it. If you leave a comment, I guarantee Ryotaro or I, or maybe both, will respond. And hey, if you get the chance, check us out on LinkedIn or Facebook. But even better, if you like the show, tell people about it. Disrupting Japan is my labor of love, and it's free forever. People hear about the podcast because listeners like you enjoy it, and they tell their friends about it. But most of all, thanks for listening. And thank you for letting people interested in Japanese startups and innovation know about the show. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for listening to Disrupting Japan.